One day soon, I'm gonna be the boss.
And I'm going to teach and empower the next generation.
One day soon, I'll use science to save the planet.
And one day soon, I'll save lives.
Right now, I'm ready to take the first step.
No matter what your goal, choose a pathway at Southern Cross University to transform your future.
G'day and welcome to the National Virtual Expo. I'm your host, Rob Malikia. I'm so excited about today's session because for the last decade, as I've been doing YouTube videos at every Australian university, there's been one source of information that I have referenced every single time, and that's the Compare Ed website. It's literally one of your sources of truth when you are looking for a university experience. And luckily for you, today, our last day of the National Virtual Expo, we are diving into detail about the Compare Ed website. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Liz Kellen, who is a research director at the Social Research Centre. And the Social Research Centre run the Quality Indicators of Learning and Teaching survey, which is a suite of surveys delivered for the Australian government. All of that sounds very technical, but what you need to know is that you can really easily access all of this great data on the Compare Ed website, compareed.edu.au. Details in the session description down below. And hey, look, if you've got questions as we're going through this session, please feel free to drop them in the chat, whether you're watching on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever it is on the session hub. We'll try to get to them as part of this session, but we do have a very full session. So if we don't get to them, I will answer every single question on the Choosing Your Uni Discord, the Expo Discord. And once again, you can find a description in the session notes down below. Now, I need to put my headphone on because Liz is joining me via video link. Here we go. I'm in, Liz.
Hey Rob, how you going?
It's great to have you here.
Oh, lovely to chat to you, Rob. Looking forward to it.
And as I also said, you just heard my introduction. I'm genuinely frothing like two beer cans that have been shaken up in the back of a ute about this session because, as I say, data, understanding how to make your choice and finding information that underpins, that choice, it can be difficult. And Compared is just such a great resource. So maybe we start off just by talking. Actually, before we get to that, I'm going too fast. Tell me about you. What's your story? How did you end up at the CRC?
Oh, well, thanks, Rob. My story is a little bit of an indirect one, I think. So when I first went to university, I thought I wanted to study teaching. I was going to become a science teacher because, I'm a bit of a nerd, Rob. I liked maths, I liked physics, I liked chemistry. And so, I came from rural New South Wales and I thought, you know what, I'll be a science teacher. That uses all of those things. And I got to university and I actually changed after my first year into chemical engineering, which uses all of the same skills.
Awesome.
And I've come to the Social Research Centre, having worked first as a chemical engineer, but then moving into government in sort of science policy roles. And now I'm here at the Social Research Centre working on sort of education policy and these fantastic resources, which are the quality indicators of learning and teaching surveys, which all of that great data gets put into Compare Ed for students to use.
Before we get to compare, because like your story is fascinating. Can we maybe just can I just ask a few more questions about that? Because I think there's probably some stuff in there that'll really help some of the audience making their choice. But you mentioned so you moved from regional New South Wales somewhere else. So where were you living and where did you go to uni?
Yeah, I grew up in Tamworth, New South Wales, so
Nice.
that's about 6 hours north of Sydney. And I moved to Sydney to study at UNSW, which was a great move actually. I really enjoyed it. I stayed at one of the residential colleges on campus there at UNSW, Bassett College, which still exists. I think they've got a new building now. It's a bit flasher, but yeah, it was a great experience, and it really meant I got to meet a lot of people from really different degrees who are still, lifelong friends more than a decade later. So it was a really good experience.
The other thing that I picked up on is that you were talking about changing direction, because I think a lot of
Mm.
people have this kind of fear of changing direction. Can you tell me about that choice to change?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think this is something that I didn't really know about before I went to uni
Yeah.
either. But because a lot of degrees, have a similar sort of foundation. That first year, you really got to cover some basics. So, um, a lot of people I know that, so I was doing science teaching, but the engineers were doing almost exactly the same first year subjects. So um, four subjects a semester at the time. I was doing, maths, physics, chemistry, and an education subjects, and the engineers were doing maths, physics, and chemistry. Well, some of them, the type of engineering I went into was chemical engineering, so that made sense. And they were doing an engineering subject. So actually, when I got to the end of my first year, I talked to some friends. I sort of realized that maybe I was a bit more my interests were a bit more aligned with that engineering sort of side of things once I knew what it was. Um, I was able to just transfer across, and I didn't even lose any time in my degree because I'd already done basically the same subjects, and the education subjects I'd done just sort of counted as my electives.
Nice.
And I could catch up that first year engineering subject later. So it is, I think the thing that I say now, having had that experience, is as long as you're vaguely in the right area, you might not know exactly what you want to do, but as long as you're pretty much in the right area, you're able to sort of have that bit of flexibility, particularly in the sciences, in engineering, those sorts of things, but also in other degrees, changing majors in the arts and humanities. It's more possible than people think. I knew quite a few people who did it.
It's so true, isn't it? I mean, I hear a lot of discussion now. Oh, like uni's really expensive and hex debt and all that kind of stuff. And my argument is like, yeah, you have to invest in this, right? Like you're going to have a hex debt if you're not don't have the means to pay up front. But there is no greater opportunity in your life to explore so many different fields of study, so many different facets than at university. And in the end, you're better off to spend a year and whatever that costs, $5,000, $10,000, and figuring that out than living your whole life becoming that sort of 60-year-old who's sitting there starting to go, ooh, maybe I actually went and did the wrong thing at university and ended up in this career that I hate. Like, what? Like, if you could say, okay, I'm going to make you pay 10 grand, but at the end of that, you're going to figure out exactly what you want. I'd be like, where do I sign? Once you're working, like, aren't you better off to be doing something that you love than otherwise? End rant.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like it's such an important time. And I think that's the thing. Like you can think about it all you want before you get there, but once you get to university, or higher education, or whatever sort of training course you want to do, you actually figure it out a lot more because all of a sudden you get exposed to all these different ideas
Yeah.
and these different people and different career paths that you didn't actually know existed. So sometimes you can't even get to the point where you can make that decision until you're there, until you're, engaging with all these different people and ideas and career paths that you never knew existed.
Exactly. You didn't know they existed. So you got to discover that place somewhere, and uni is the place. So look, we've digressed. You've got such an interesting story. I wish we could do a whole episode just on this, whole session just on this. But let's go and talk
We
about.
won't bore people with that.
I think the human story is always the most interesting for me, and so maybe let's talk about the humans who are watching this session and how they could go about choosing their university.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question, right? Because everyone has a different priority when they're choosing their university. You know this better than most, Rob. You've got all of the experience here. Some people are looking at, what other students thought of the university. Some people are looking at, how prestigious the university is. Some people want to know that they've got the exact course that they want to study. Some want to think about affordability. Can they move for university, or are they going to stay in their hometown if they're lucky enough to live somewhere with a university? So it's really, there's so many different ways that people look at choosing their universities. And I think some of the ones that are really important but probably get a little bit less airtime are how much do other students enjoy the degree? But also, do the graduates from these universities get jobs? Are they being employed when they finish their degrees? And I think most people don't really think about that as much because they don't know that this data is out there that can tell them exactly that, which is what Compare Ed does.
The other one that I love is, what do employers think about graduates from these particular universities and from fields of study? So we're going to break this all down for you, because ultimately, if you end up in a job, you want that employer to think that you've got the skills and experience to do that job. And once again, you can get that information before you start a particular degree and understand, are the skills that you're getting out of this degree, like, do employers like that? That I think is a remarkable insight. So this is really, really good. Okay, so tell me about Compare Ed, the website, and then maybe we can, for the data nerds out there, maybe we can talk about some of the underlying research work that goes under the hood. But let's start off. Let's deliver some value for those people watching along. Let's talk about the website, how it works, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Compare Ed website, which we'll show you in a minute, you can see all of this incredible information from other students. So you can see what other students thought about their overall experience at that university. You can see what they thought about their teaching. You can see how they felt about their interactions with other students, what they thought about the facilities, resources. And it's not just that, you can also see after they finish their degree, did they rate their course? Did they get a job? Did they get a full-time job? How much were they paid? Like you said, Rob, how satisfied their employers were with their skills. There is such great information here. And the best thing about it is you could compare between different unis and between different study areas, which is great.
Yeah.
And so the way we get all that data is we run surveys for the Australian government. The Department of Education wants to make sure students have access to this information. So they survey every single year every student at an Australian university or, a non-university higher education organisation, so the TAFEs and things. They send out a survey to every single student, and then they come back again when they finished their degree and they're, 6 months out of uni in their first job. They survey them again, and they don't just survey those graduates again, they survey their employers as well. So you get this fantastic picture of how students feel about it during their degree, and then how they succeed afterwards. And it's just such a valuable source of information. I think it's probably time. Should I
Let's dive
share
in
the
and have a
screen
look.
so everyone
Yes,
can see
please.
it?
And as you do that, I just want to ask you, like, personal question. As a social researcher, this must just be like a gold mine of data, right? Like, you must get really excited about
Yes.
the level of depth that you can get down to from these survey responses.
Absolutely. And I just love, for me, it's about how accessible it is to everyone. Because, it doesn't help if this information's, in some report on a website, buried in an Excel table somewhere. This is really usable. It is right in front of you. And I think that, for me, is one of the best things about it.
Awesome. Let's dive in. So what are we looking at here, Liz?
So this is the front end of the Compare Ed website. So it's really designed to help people compare different courses. Should I give you a test drive?
Yeah, let's take an example
I'll
and
give you a go.
yeah.
So let me take. I'm going to use my own example that we've just talked about, because this didn't exist when I was looking at my university. But if it had, right, I was initially looking to go to uni and study education. So I might have looked up the degree teacher education. Here's the study area. So you can see there's a couple of other options there if you know exactly what you're looking for, but I'll just pick teacher education now. So you can see here that shows me 51 of 60 institutions, and there's a bit of data here already. So what I might have done, because I was from Tamworth in New South Wales, maybe I'm going to filter my results here. So maybe I want to only look at New South Wales institutions, and maybe I'm only looking at universities, for example. So if I put those filters on, I can see I've got 19 different institutions, and I can go through here and have a look, comparing. What if I'm looking for a university? I don't have any preconceptions. I don't know where I want to start. So maybe I'll look at this smiley face here is the percentage of students that had an overall positive experience. Then you've got positive about their skills development next to it, and whether or not they found full-time employment at the end. So maybe I want to go through and say, okay, I'm going to look for, unis that had, a really high positive overall experience. So say I'm looking for ones that are over 80%. So I can add universities to my list. So, I'll pick on the ones for my teaching area that had
Yeah, and actually,
an overall education experience, higher than 80% or
as you go through that, like the top one up there is probably the very first one you clicked on is probably a great example. Like Avondale Uni, almost guaranteed, most people have never heard of Avondale. Small institution
Exactly.
just outside Sydney, but its student satisfaction results are consistently bonkers, like so good. So a perfect example, like you never would have even heard of this institution, and there it is right in front of you, and the statistic doesn't lie. It actually tells you the top line number. And what's critical, viewers, is that it's not just about this is not just talking about the whole uni, this is talking about for teaching, for education, that's the number. And I think that's critical, is you've got to look for the data that actually lines up with you. If uni hasn't got an awesome student satisfaction overall, but in your niche area, it does really well, that's what counts.
Absolutely. And universities specialize, right?
They
Like some
specialise.
universities are better at different degrees. Some universities have a really good reputation for certain areas or certain professions. So it's fantastic to be able to get down to that level. Like here for teacher education. And so once I've got those, however many universities I want to compare, in my list, I've got this little button up the top here where I can see them all side by side. So I can compare those 4 universities in, teacher education that on a whole bunch of things. So it's not just those, that positive overall experience, which I selected for. I can then dig down into, their skills development. How did students feel about how their skills were developed in their degree? How, what did they think about the teaching? There's so much information here. And obviously, I still have to go and look at other things, right? I still have to go and look at where they are. I still have to go and look at, the different things. Maybe I'm still concerned about, the prestige of the university. Some people are. Maybe I'm looking at, do they have scholarships? All those sorts of things. You still have to go and do some more research, but there's so much here to start you off with a short list.
Yeah, awesome. Actually, this one, third column, Notre Dame, if you could just scroll back up for a moment, just another good example, up one more. There was a stat that was around 87%.
Oh, yes.
That one there.
Positive about the skills development.
Yeah, skills development.
Really
right?
high.
Same thing, Notre Dame, also a small institution that a lot of people won't have heard of, but for education on a national level does extraordinarily well. And there you go, you look at one statistic and it's outperforming some more major institutions like Charles Sturt and the University of Wollongong. So does that mean you should go to that university? No, but gee, it's good to know. It's good to feed that
Absolutely.
in. Yeah.
And you have to think about what's important for you as well. What's the most important thing for you about your university experience? Is it going to be the teaching? Is it going to be your career afterwards? So you have to figure out what's most important to you, and then you'll know, how you want to compare those things. I think we've also got down the bottom here. We're happy with facilities. Oh, I was just looking. I think I'm in the wrong section for the one I was looking for. But yeah, so many other things. Look at this. 90% of University of Wollongong students were happy with their facilities and resources.
That's
That's
awesome.
another thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
wonderful, isn't it?
like a 90% figure is extra. Like anything over 90% is like that's a significant advantage in pretty much every area. Yeah, just because 9 out of 10 people are super happy with whatever criteria you're looking at is an extraordinary result. Really, anything over 80 is very strong. That's a
Yeah,
very,
that's
very
it.
macro broad statement. And look, just to pick up on something
Well,
too that you mentioned about researching some of that more qualitative stuff like cost of living and not quality, cost of living, like living experience, scholarships, and everything like that. That's why we built the Choosing Your Uni platform, which allows you to basically interact with a chat agent like AI to draw out those kind of details without having to visit a million different websites. So what you do is you use a website like this to dive into your data, and then you use something like Choosing Your Uni to be able to ask questions saying, oh, I want to live on residential college. Which of these universities have residential colleges, and tell me about that. And so you don't have to go to 10 different sites. It's all in one place. Yeah.
that's so good.
It's very cool. Like the technology that's available, the resources available for students now is like nothing that ever existed before. So
Oh, it's
yeah,
amazing.
super cool.
Absolutely.
Can we maybe
Well,
have a look at some of the employment stuff too? Because I think that's one of the areas. So here we've sort of been looking at student satisfaction, but
absolutely.
yeah, employment. And I get asked this a lot. I get asked a lot about, and particularly people. Oh, I've got a brochure around here somewhere from one of the unis. People get the brochure, and on the back of the brochure it says rated 5 stars for blah blah blah, and highest starting salaries in the country for XYZ. And I'm kind of like, oh, this is the marketing. Right? And don't get me wrong, like I'm a bit of a marketer myself, so I respect the trade, but I also know that it's easy. What do they say? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Like pick the statistic that matches your message.
Yeah.
And universities, like every business, every organisation, are the same like this. So you do need to take that stuff with a grain of salt. And graduate data, starting salaries, employment rates, and stuff like that is the same. So can we maybe have a bit of a look at those?
Yeah, definitely. I'll use an example as well, again from my own experience in terms of starting salary and employment satisfaction. So I went to UNSW and I started off doing teacher education, so I'll add that to Compare Ed, because I think this is the other thing you can do. You can compare not just between institutions, but also between degrees. So if I then look, I changed into chemical engineering. Um, Here we go, part of engineering. And so I can actually compare those two degrees at my same university. So if you're not sure exactly what you want to study, if you're not sure, if you'd be equally happy in either, there's some really great comparisons you've got. So here,
This is awesome.
we just looked at current student experience, but let's look at recent graduate employment and salary. So if I look at how many found full-time employment, it's basically the same.
Same,
So
yeah.
from those two degrees. So from engineering and education, both, have really high full-time employment rates. You can see the national average is just below the main statistic. So they're both above the national average.
Yeah.
Over 90% found employment after they finished their degree. There's some stats on if they continue to study full time, but then you've got median salary, which surprisingly
Same,
is
same.
actually exactly the same.
Mm,
So I think that it's a bit of a myth buster, isn't it? So this is obviously your
totally.
salary straight after you finish your degree. And that can change over the course of your career as well. But it's really interesting to see that teachers and engineers, like from this degree, from this institution, are coming out on the same sort of starting salary. which I don't think a lot of people would necessarily expect.
I think people would be shocked by that, to be honest, thinking that a teacher is getting paid the same as an engineer. And of course, over time, those might diverge. And that's where like more research is required if money is important to you.
That's it.
You know, because it may be, it may not be. I mean, we all need money to live, of course, but you know, to what extent that drives us is a question that only you can know. And to the extent that, like, even people who might be trying to give you advice, your parents, your friends, your grandma, your dog, if your dog's a good listener, like, everyone will have an opinion, right? But only you truly know you. So when you look at something like that, that should give you a feeling about whether or not that means something to you. So listen to that feeling would be my advice.
I absolutely agree. And I think one of the things I really appreciate is having a way to sort of sense check, because sometimes, I got some really good advice from some of my, teachers and friends and family, but some of it was a bit outdated. Some probably reflected how things were about 10 or 20 years ago, whereas this data is, it's been collected in the last couple of years. It's up to date. It's going to reflect what's happening now in the education market, how universities are working like today. So that's really valuable, even just as a sense check. I think there's still really good advice from people that know you well. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to really, think about what's important to you and what you want to prioritize in your career.
Absolutely. So, I mean, because I talk about this all the time, but I think a lot of people aren't aware of this resource. Like, how can we get this into more hands, Liz, is my question.
Oh, Rob, you need to help there. I think everyone, like, I don't think enough people are using, this sort of data, because it's so you can personalize it so much. You can look at exactly what you want to do when you get to university. I think we've got to share it amongst our friends, amongst our family, amongst people we know that are, in their last years of high school, looking at choosing what they want to do. We just have to start sharing that this exists so people can have a look at it. We need careers advisors to be recommending it to their students because this is such a valuable public resource that the government's put together, and it is, such a treasure trove for people to use. So, Rob, thank you for sharing it. We're really grateful that you use Compare Ed so much and you plug the data, because it makes a difference.
I'm a noisy advocate. Earlier in the expo, I did a session on essentially getting started on choosing your uni, choosing your degree, and it sort of goes from. So, folks, if you haven't yet watched that session, if you're literally starting from scratch, that's a great place to start, because I really start by, okay, you have no idea where to start. Here are some of the tools that you can use to step you through and start to find yourself and to orient yourself towards, firstly, a field of study, and then a degree. And of course, that starts by using tools like choosing your uni. There are others out there that help identify your profile. So, like your attributes, helps line you up with potential fields of study. And from there, you can start to dive into potential universities, your different goals and preferences around unis. And then I was talking about Compare Ed as being, this is like that critical tool as you're going through and you're saying, okay, if I'm choosing between engineering and teaching, let me look what that means in terms of graduates, and specifically at particular institutions. Once again, just because a uni has one stat doesn't mean that you should or shouldn't go there, but knowledge is power. So this is an absolute critical step in that whole journey to uni, in my view.
Absolutely. Actually, I'd love to say just on that for Compare Ed, I think one of the things about it that I haven't shown you is that you can compare the institution
Yeah,
overall
please.
as well.
I
So
love
if you're
that.
not sure where you want to go, or what you want to do, here we go. Where are we? You can look at all the different institutions just for everything before you drill down into your um, specific degree that you want to do. So let's say, I if I lived in Sydney, for example, or if I had relatives in Sydney that I could go and live with during university, I could compare some of the Sydney universities that were near their houses. So let's say I could compare, the Western Sydney University, University of Sydney. We've got UNSW as well. There's other universities in Sydney, but I'll just pick those for now, and I can compare them and just look at the universities overall and say, okay, well, at these universities, is there any real difference in terms of student experience before I start, narrowing down maybe you've got like 10 unis you could go to and you wanted to only go to, 3 or 4 open days. You don't have all the time. So you can actually have a look and compare, um, between different universities overall if you're still not sure where you want to go or what you might have wanted to do, which I think is really, really fantastic.
As you're scrolling there, I think this is an interesting way to look
So
at it.
many
So
things.
if you're scrolling there, like, so to me,
Mm.
I'm always looking for, when I look at this sort of data, is I'm looking for the exceptions, right? So
Yeah.
you might be scrolling through, like maybe you're comparing 4 or 5 different things at once, and you're scrolling down, you're like, okay, these are all more or less the same, right? If it's a little bit above
Which
or
is
a little,
sometimes good to know as well,
it's good
isn't
to know.
it?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
This
yeah.
is bang on average. But here, like,
Yeah.
okay, suddenly we've got an 81 that kind of stands out. I'm like, oh, well, what's that? It's not hugely, I mean, it's significantly, as it's statistically significantly above the others, but, those are the things that kind of jump out and go, oh, okay. And then you can sort of say, well, what is this criteria I'm looking at? And then decide if that is or isn't relevant to you. So you don't need to spend hours and hours literally trawling through every line. People like us, Liz, actually do that, but some people just want
That's all right. That's our job.
That's our jobs. Some people just want the nuggets. It's pretty easy to get the nuggets. You scroll through, you look for those numbers that are either look significantly high, like they look much higher than others, or that look much lower. And then you can say, oh, okay, well, this uni is terrible on student satisfaction. And my question is always then like, well, why? Just because,
Yeah.
and there's some classic examples, some of the big famous Australian universities that on global rankings might be ranked in the top in Australia on student satisfaction perform incredibly poorly. Like they're some of the lowest in Australia or the lowest. My question then isn't like, oh, well, God, I shouldn't go there. The question is why? Why does a massive group of 8 institution that's world famous perform badly on student satisfaction? And the answer is sometimes things like, well, they teach a vast array of subjects. So, depending on what subject area it is, the student satisfaction might be higher or lower. It's a huge institution. If a university is massive, it means you have to be a lot more proactive. You haven't got the hand-holding support of a small or a regional institution. So then that why becomes important. If you're a student that needs that support, that needs that hand-holding, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you literally need more support to get through your degree, for what reason? A massive uni probably isn't the best choice for you. So you don't just look at the stat and say, oh, it's better, therefore that's for me. You have to think about why it is better and then think about what that means for you.
Absolutely. Is it better and is it better for you is a great way, a great way to put it.
There's a lot of thinking in all of this, Liz.
Oh, there's so much.
Who would
And
have
I
thought?
think, yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Like one of the things I love is this, looking at what the grads think after they've finished as well. Because you've got at the current student experience, you can see, they're all similar, but Western Sydney is a little bit higher, during their degree. And then at recent graduate satisfaction, the picture changes a little bit. It's a little bit higher. So it's really interesting to go through and think about, yeah, what there's different people see it at differently at different points of their degree as well, when they're doing it once they finish. So there's a lot to take in, but I think it is really about thinking about what's important to you.
Can I just take one more step? So this has been incredible. Maybe we can close that screen share and we can just chat a little bit more. But for people that really want to dive into this, so of course the CompareEd website is a fantastic place, super easy for you to choose and select and everything like that. But there is another level that you can go to if you really want to look into detail. And that's the actual quilt data itself, which is publicly available. Could you maybe just talk briefly about the quilt data sets, where people might find? I mean, that's going to be too deep for 90% of people that are probably watching now. But for some people that really want to explore, quilt is like the gold mine, quite literally.
Absolutely. If this is your thing, then this is, absolutely. Quilt is absolutely a fantastic
And
resource. So we have 4 different surveys in Quilt. If you want to dig into any particular point in that sort of, student life cycle. We've got the student experience survey, which is during your degree. We've got the graduate outcome survey, which is just after people finish their degree, about 4 to 6 months after you finish your course. They then let us know who they're working for, and we survey their employers. It's not about rating the graduates, it's just about getting a picture of what are employers thinking about graduates across Australia. Are universities producing grads with the right skills for industry and for their jobs? And then we actually follow up again 3 years later to see what are the outcomes for graduates 3 years after they finish their degree. And that's the GOZEL, that's the Graduate Outcome Survey longitudinal data. And they're all available, if this is the sort of thing you want to dig into, on the Quilt website. And there's some fantastic tables. Do you want me to share?
Yeah, maybe we can do
show you
that.
those
And
as well?
what I'm thinking for, this is probably career advisor territory. This is probably
Definitely,
not
yeah.
for students, maybe for parents. If you're a data person and you really want to spend some time digging into the details, the level of detail in here is quite extraordinary. So here we're on the Quilt website. I think it's quilt.edu.au off the top of my head, isn't it?
Yes, quilt.edu.au.
QILT.
There's no U in,
No U in
yeah,
quilt.
no U in this quilt because it's the quality indicators of learning and teaching.
Although, Liz,
Um,
there is a U in quilt because it's all about you. So
Oh,
that?
oh, that's good. Oh, we need to use that.
I know you need to do that.
Don't trademark it.
Don't trademark. I am a
yeah,
father, so I'm allowed to tell dad jokes. So there you go.
Oh, that's all right then.
Terrible.
So yeah, this one's for the recent student experience survey. You can see here, like this is the level of data that's going into the Compare website. We had over 158,000 undergrad students and 99,000 postgrad students complete the last survey. So the data you're getting is good when you're looking at Compare Ed. And then if you're digging in, say for careers advisors, we've got these online tables where you can look at the most recent reports. So say student learning experience by university, and you can cut this data in all sorts of ways. You can see the tables, for those who are a bit nerdier amongst us, you can see the confidence intervals here, all that sort of thing. And you can drill down, by different universities again. You can drill down by peer engagement, skills development. There's all sorts of ways you can cut this data, and it's all on the website. It's really user friendly. So if you are looking to get more into the data as well, Compare Ed is fantastic. I actually think it's really, really detailed, but this is just another way
It's another level, isn't it?
you can get into that.
Actually, I'm just looking at that one right at the bottom, international student experience by country. That's really interesting. You're coming to Australia from overseas. There's literally data
Absolutely.
that you can look at about that. Cool.
Maybe I can show you. There we go. So this is the experience by university.
Yeah.
But what have we got? We've got by international students experience by country. So this is overall, you can look at if you're coming to Australia for university, say from one of these countries. These are the most common countries for international students.
Yeah.
By total number of people. You can sort of see what they're thinking about how they found their experience. Did they improve their English skills? How was their work experience? How was their personal safety on campus? Really great to see that is so high. All of these fantastic things as a resource for international students to have a look at Australian universities and how their experience was.
Yeah, incredible. QILT.edu.au is where you'll find this level of magic. And I just want to talk very briefly about global rankings. And feel free to step in if you like, Liz, but you probably don't want to antagonize those guys either, but I'm happy to call it out. So global rankings, folks, is you'll see lots of global rankings data, and unis will really flash that stuff around on the top level because it looks really good. We are University X in the world. We're in the top percentages of unis in the world. And all of that's interesting, and it's kind of more marketing speak though, right? The big international rankings networks are based on stuff that might not actually be relevant to you. A lot of those rankings lean very heavily into research output. So how much research your unis are generating, that's not relevant to you if you're going to become a teacher. I just don't think some of that stuff is actually relevant. So the big rankings are very different to, and are constructed very differently to what we're looking at here. This is real data that's come from human beings that have actually studied at these places. It's run by Australian government via an independent organisation. This, to me, is high confidence. I really trust the data that I see coming from Quilt and coming through Compared Ed. It's not that I don't trust the data that comes from those global rankings, I'm just more skeptical about how relevant it is to a choice. There are a few exceptions to that. If you're looking at things like social impact and things like that, where you're starting to get down to answer specific questions, maybe that's more relevant. But those global top ranking global numbers, I just don't think they're that important compared to stuff like what we've been looking at today. Personal opinion.
I think Quilt absolutely is. If you're a student coming into a university, this is the compare ed data is what I'd be looking at myself. And I know, there's really high trust in the data. There's so many students responding to the data, hundreds of thousands of students responding, giving you that really great picture across universities at the course level. And all of our, the methods, no one needs to go into it, but our methods are published online. It's really transparent. It's really high quality. This is the data that I would be using if I was going to university for the first time.
Me too. There we go.
Even the second time or the third time.
Actually, and you have
but I'm going back.
You have been to. Maybe we finish on that. So you've done what's called a doctorate. So for those people listening, if you're not familiar with that, it's actually postdoctorate's technically higher, but it's like the top level of study. You typically do an undergraduate degree, then you might do a master's, and then you may move on and do a doctorate or a PhD, is what we call it. And you did yours at the University of Cambridge. That's pretty freaking cool.
I know. It sounds quite good, doesn't it?
It's very flash.
Do you know what, Rob? It was pretty flash. It was a great experience, but I never would have done it if it wasn't for my sister. She is such a clever cookie. She was doing some, research work after she finished her undergraduate from the University of Wollongong. And she's so smart. She was doing, Alzheimer's research, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to do a PhD. Not really sure either way. So she thought, I'll just apply for one. And she thought, if I'm just applying for one, I'll apply for the best one in the world for what she was doing. And she did that, and she got in. And she got this fantastic Australian scholarship to go over, and such a clever cookie. And she's a data person as well. So she called me one day. She was like, "Oh, do you know that the odds for Australians who apply to do a postgrad at Cambridge are pretty good?" Because they actually publish these.
Interesting.
There's a bit of self-selection going on, I'd say, in terms of the people that apply. Because I never would have applied, Rob, if it just felt so out of reach for someone in Australia to go to somewhere like Cambridge. And she said, no, look, I've looked at the data of all the Australians that apply. 1 in 2 get in, and 1 in 3 start their course.
Wow.
For doing the postgrad. So those odds, I'm a data person. I was like, I can go for those odds. That's worth a crack, and that's how I ended up at Cambridge.
Just need to run faster than the next guy, right? As they say, don't need to swim faster than a shark. Just need to swim faster than the person next to you. That's awesome.
Good way to put it. But
awesome.
I think this is the thing about data, isn't it? Yeah. Like if I had never heard that, I probably wouldn't have gone.
And life would have been different.
Full credit to my sister for
I love it.
Being a guiding light.
And just in terms of experience, and we'll wrap up on that. What's it like to? I mean, because that's and we have done a session on studying a degree overseas, and as well as doing a session on going and doing an exchange as part of your degree. But what's it like to have that experience studying at place? I mean, it's got so much history, Cambridge.
It does. It was really special. I think the thing that really got me is I would walk in to my college through these big doors and this old brick building, and it's old. It's old, but it was actually older than Machu Picchu. This building, which we were using like every day. The porters, the people who let you in and out and kept your mail and everything, they were sitting at the front in this building that was that old. It's such an interesting place where you've got that living history, all these things still being used. And it was a lovely place to be. You could cycle everywhere. Yeah, really beautiful environment to be in. But I definitely recommend an exchange as well. I actually did during my degree, I did an exchange over to the University of California in Santa Barbara. And I've still got friends from that exchange. We still have a book club every couple of months, and they're all over the world now. It's getting really hard to schedule. Someone's always up at 6 a.m. But they're in Singapore, they're in the UK, they're in US, all doing these incredible things. So I would, yeah, if it's possible, if it's doable for you, I'd definitely recommend an exchange. Considering it's a lot of paperwork, but it's worth it.
This is one of our last sessions of the virtual expo. So just to reference a couple of others, you can go back and watch on the recording that tie into what Liz was just talking about. Whole session that you can find in the session catalogue on doing an exchange or an international study experience as part of your degree. We've got a great session from Thomas Bell that I recorded with Thomas Beltrame. I think I've mispronounced his name. Sorry, mate. Which talks about the whole journey through uni. So he's also done his doctorate. And so we talk about that whole process. We go into detail about going from bachelor's into master's into a doctorate. So just so you understand what that entire journey could be for you if you're in for a 10-year plus expedition to get to like literally the academic peak. So those are a couple. Liz, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for the time joining me on the National Virtual Expo. Any last thoughts, shouting out to people who are thinking about going to uni or their parents and supporters who are watching along?
Oh, just good luck. Like, enjoy it. It is a great time of your life. It's such an incredible period for development. Um, Even if you're not sure, I think my main thought is even if you're not sure what you want to do, just figure out you're only part of the way there. You don't need to know exactly what you want to do in your degree, and you don't need to know exactly what you want to do in your career right now, but find an area that's about right, that's got most of the things you want, that interests you, and from there you can find your niche, you can find your career, you can find your interests. And like we said, Rob, if even you get there and you actually find it's not for you, even if you were completely set on something, you get to university and actually find the job wouldn't be something you'd be interested in, you can change. And so, don't feel like you're having to make that final decision now. You're moving towards something. Just keep moving in the right direction and you'll find what works for you.
That is so spot on. And my final thought is that, young people in particular hear a lot, you got to find your passion and you got to follow your passion. I actually think that we need to flip that narrative around. Most people in life become passionate about something because they've been doing it for a period of time. And as they get more experience and they niche down into different areas, they find that thing, the passion grows on them. It's not something that you find first and then pursue. It's something that you start. It's the movement that, the motion that actually creates that enthusiasm, that passion for something. So anyone that tells you, find your passion is actually freaking wrong. Like, your passion will find you eventually, as long as you're always moving and choosing.
Absolutely agree.
There we go. Liz, thank you so much for joining me. My guest has been Dr. Liz Killen, who's a research director at the Social Research Centre, who run the phenomenal QILT survey suite for the Australian government. We've been talking about the Compare Ed website, which you must use. Thanks so much for joining me at the National Virtual Expo in this session. Once again, all of the recordings are available on demand for you. You can find them at expo.choosingyouruni.com/sessions. And if you've got any questions at all about what we've talked about in this session, or questions about which institution might suit you, which field of study, which degree, make sure you jump in the Choosing Your Uni Discord, where you can get independent thoughts from the community on what might suit you. And if you're a parent, we have a whole Facebook community just for you too, where you can ask your questions and get your answers. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. I'm Rob Malicki. Well, I hope you got something out of this session. And if you have any questions at all, you can head to choosingyouruni.com and ask Lumen. Lumen is your AI guide who knows about every university, every pathway, every option that we've talked about throughout this virtual expo. And Lumen is available to talk to you 24/7. So it's ready when you are.